Hello to my 144,000 brothers and sisters out there. Stephen once again, shedding fruit of enlightenment, for the leaves are ready and the branches are heavy with its ripeness. So here we go. I'm going to break down for you what the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is. What the particular species of tree this tree is. And I'm going to explain it in such a way that hopefully you can grow in your spiritual awareness as you become closer to the God that you sprang from. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is a very peculiar tree. First, I'm going to lay out some biblical text for you so you actually understand what is said and what it truly means, because every layer of text has 7 meanings. And for the initiate, for the awakened, the rabbit holes sometimes get very varied and deep. So as we spelunk down these caverns dug by our white-furred friends, let's harken back to some ancient words written down long ago. In the beginning was Eden, was paradise. Man existed as basically a hamster for God, the Elohim, they that are like God, the Elohim meaning the plural form. The Elohim walked with man in paradise. Man was a blind automaton, sinless but thoughtless. We named the animals, but that was pretty much it. Our creativity knew a bounds for sure. The Elohim told humanity, the Adam, that you may eat of any fruit of any tree in the garden, however, of this tree do not eat. If you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, on that day you will surely die. However, the serpent in that particular tree said it best. Said it for what it was, told the truth. The serpent told Eve, if you eat of this fruit on that day, you will not surely die. However, your eyes will be opened, and you will come to realize that you are like unto a god. Telling Eve that these Elohim were worried that we would become what they are. So Eve, hearing this truth, recognizing it for what it was, understanding her limitations in the garden, her submissive nature to her husband, which she was taken out of and not created uniquely. For woe man was taken out of man. She ate the fruit and gave some of it to her husband for him to eat as well. Her husband, not knowing what kind of fruit it was, ate it, but his eyes were opened and they became ashamed. They sensed a disconnect, a separation that caused them guilt. And they took fig leaves and they fashioned for themselves garments out of these fig leaves. And when the Elohim came back into the garden, inquiring where their pet hamster had ran off to, Elohim called out, "Where are you?" And Adam and Eve showed their faces, but not their nude bodies. For due to their shame they had fashioned clothes and were no longer naked. And they said, "We fashioned these clothes to hide our nakedness, for we were ashamed." And the Elohim said, "Who told you you were naked? How did you know this? For there is no shame in nature. All animals are nude." This was the first disconnect, the first duality, the first separation of man from nature. In fact, the reason the tree is named knowledge of good and evil is because the tree is a tree of duality. It might as well be called the tree of knowledge of black and white, or the tree of knowledge of up or down, or the tree of knowledge of fat or thin. It's about duality. Duality did not exist before the fruit of this tree was consumed. or rather before the seed of this plant was planted, but I will get to that. Duality did not exist at all. At this time in the garden, in paradise, we were simply animals. We were stewards over earth. We were intelligent in it, but still a part of it. Our numbers were curtailed by the seasons, by droughts, by famines, by disease, by the lack of prey, by our inability to scavenge enough food to survive through the areas of time where food was not as abundant. See, as hunters and gatherers, as nomadic herdsmen, we had to follow the herd. And because of that, because of us having to follow the herd, our numbers were naturally curtailed by that number of the herd, that sustainable quotient that determined our ability to populate. You see, the herd was a natural way for us to have a sustainable population. Right now we have 8 billion humans on planet Earth, and it is not because of nomadic shepherding. See, back in the day we figured out something. There's this tree that grows up and down the river valley of the Nile in Middle Egypt. This tree is so abundant in its fruit, it can support a tremendous variety of species. And this tree hangs 1 foot of its root system out into the river itself, and the other foot of its root system, it digs down deep into the earth. 1 foot above land, 1 foot above water, just as Gabriel from the book of Revelations, or from the tarot deck, the angel that poured cups of water from one hand to the other, while 1 foot was on land, 1 foot was in the ocean. This duality of being in 2 places at the same time, needing the mineral richness and stability of the earth, but the water and thirst-quenching capacities of the river Nile. These sycamore fig trees can sustain a population of chimps up to 500 strong. These chimps will actually go to war with one another over fig trees. They will kill their brother chimps from a different tribe from the surrounding area in order to lay claim to one of their fig trees to increase their numbers, because not only do figs put out a tremendous quantity of fruit, but they also bloom multiple times a year and put out their fruit before all other fruiting trees. Animals from all over Africa will flock to the sycamore fig trees. They become homes of life, and they sustain everyone, including fish, for the fruit falling into the river. These fig trees are quite unique, however. I will get to that, but it's very important. The sycamore fig tree was the first agriculturalized fruit tree, the first agriculturalized plant. See, the Garden Eden is where we currently have the Persian Gulf. The Garden Eden is completely covered in water from a flood that was 12,800 years ago. And the flooding water came down and rushed into the Fertile Crescent, the Garden of Eden paradise, where the Tigris and Euphrates and Pishon and Gihon rivers all met. And you can trace back the dry riverbeds of the Pishon and the Gihon to see that I am correct. And we found the earliest forms of agriculture in that flooded Fertile Crescent river valley. We found fig seeds wrapped in mud and covered in fig leaves that are close to 13,000 years old. See, our sin was not eating this fruit, it was planting the seed. Agriculture was our fall from God. It was where we took ourselves out of the palm of God and put our own destiny solidly in our own fists. And just like God said when he kicked us out of the land of paradise and into the land of Nod, where Cain was first sent, Nod being not off to sleep, because it's the land of the sleeping. Whenever man was kicked out, he was ordered by God to go into the fields and toil with the plow and the beast of burden. And by the sweat of your own brow shall you make your bread. Not the manna of heaven that came out of the sky, not the fruit that was given to us on the Last Supper by this creative force that we call God. Not going into nature and finding plants that were already there and using that plant to benefit our bodies. Not that at all. Not going into the wild, but tearing down the wild. Tearing down the wild so that we could plant our own version of the garden with fruit trees abundant, so we could have as much food as we could possibly throw at one another, so we could store up food and preserve it for the times of fasting, where the drought or the plague or a blight or a blizzard or an extreme heat wave would limit our ability to go out and sustain ourselves in nature. Instead, we could preserve the fruit of our harvest, but we had to chop down other trees for that. We had to plant seeds, and then we had to wage war against the animals that came in for just a taste of food from their own backyard. You see, in nature, they do not know that it's our food. It's food in nature. So instead, what we do is we wage war against these creatures with pesticides, with factory farming, with totalitarian agriculture. We are not stewards on the earth. Instead, we are soldiers waging war against our brother and sister species and life forms that exist next to us, that we grew up with in the garden. The animals that Adam named in front of the Lord are murdered because they come after our food. It's not our food. The pesticides killing rabbits and groundhogs and indigenous plant life forms and birds and all sorts of different insects, that poison is the same poison you're now consuming. Because those animals had the audacity to take food that wasn't theirs. This is our fall from God. This is our fall into duality, where we stop being the universe and everything in it. We stop being a part of nature and instead took our own destiny into our own fist and denied the palm of God. We crawled out of the cradle that Mother Nature gave us to grow up in because we thought we had become too wise. We ate the fruit, and in that day we did die. We did spiritually. Our population would soar. The reason that Abel's gift was preferred by God is because he gave from the bounty of the herd, not the bounty from the harvest. Cain offered up grain cereals to the Lord, and he was cast out. He was cast out into the land of Nod to find his own home, because God knew that the shepherd or the agriculturalist would lead to two completely different forms of life. The shepherd would follow nature. His population would never grow. The villages would never become kingdoms. But the agriculturalist who had infinite population growth because of an infinite food supply, that population would grow so large, so fast that those villages would become kingdoms. Those kingdoms would become empires. People would fight over land so they could grow crops to feed the people, so the population could continue to grow, so they could be taxed, so they could become richer. Before agriculture, there was no theft. We lived as villages that took care of one another. We raised each other's children. We didn't go off and murder each other for land, because we didn't think of land as a commodity. Land was part of us, part of our home. It was our home. Instead, we took ourselves out of our home and made by our own hands a feeble house that cannot stand. The way we're living is detrimental to the entire ecosystem. The way we're living is detrimental to our spiritual well-being. We have stopped relying on nature and started relying on our own intellect. And that has taken us out of God's hand and created this duality of consciousness, where we think we're separate from nature. We're not separate. See, the fig is as varied as the fig wasp. The fig wasp is a tiny insect that stings, much like the flying locust from the bottomless pit from the book of Revelations. This wasp life cycle, this wasp reproduction cycle is linked to the reproduction cycle of that tree. And the ripeness of the fruit is tied to the wasp, this co-opted insect. You see, the wasp that emerges from the fig is very special indeed. The fig is not a fruit, people. The fig is not some apple that fell down off a tree and hit Newton, even though fig Newtons are very real and obviously obey gravity. The fig is a flower that never stopped being a bulb. It never opened. Its petals never spread and saw the sun. The fruit of the fig tree is a flower that is closed to the light. The flower of a fig tree is a fruit that holds within it the pestle, the pollinating factor of the tree itself. The flower is the fruit. Is the only inward turned flower that becomes sweet from the sunshine, that turns the photons into sugars that sustain all life. And the fig wasp is key to this all. The female fig wasp is the only gender to emerge from the fig. Whenever the fig crawls out into the sun and becomes ripe, that's when the wasp crawls out of the fig. The fig wasp female, she emerges from the fig pregnant with an immaculate conception, covered in eggs. She becomes fat off of the honey of the fruit of the sycamore fig tree. She carries her fat belly stuffed with sweet sugars and belly full of babies. She carries it off into the wind. She searches for another fig, like the fig she sprang from. She goes inside of that fig. She shoots down into the core. She eats the plentiful, succulent sucrose provided by the sun and by the river and by the land and the air. She turns that sugar into sweet milk for her babies. She dies there. She sacrifices herself for the fig, for her children. She lays her eggs all inside the center hollow that she has eaten out. And those eggs, they begin to hatch. And their poor dead mother is a sacrifice for them. The first wasp to hatch from these eggs, they're the male wasps. And they hungrily devour tunnels into the fig. They seek the sunshine and the fresh air. They tunnel through the sugars, through the matrix of sweet, sweet honey. But they never see the light of day. In fact, in their frenzied dig, they rip their own wings off. They tear their wings off in the tunnels. They hope to one day finish, but they never see that day. They die there at the end of their tunnels. That's when the females start to hatch. Whenever the females hatch, they're much larger than their brothers were. And they find their brothers' tunnels. And they crawl out of their brothers' tunnels. They fertilize themselves in the corpses of their fallen siblings. The female wasp is the only wasp to leave the fig. And they crawl out like spores off of a mushroom. They fill the air and fertilize the fig tree. That's why every fig you eat that is produced in nature will have a dead female mother wasp in the center. A mother wasp that gave herself to her children for sustenance. That gave herself like manna. That gave herself like the bread of the new covenant from the Last Supper. She gave herself to her children so they could eat. And her children, her sons, died for her daughters to become mothers. Inside of every closed, flowered fig morsel, inside of every closed petal that is the fruit of the fig tree, the closed flower that is your mind, inside of every single fig there is a wasp, a co-opted insect. And just like the scorpion has a sting on the end of its tail, so does the wasp. Just like these locusts eat your memories like the leaves of the weeds in the garden, these wasps also pollinate your mind. You are here on earth to learn and grow. If you remembered all your past lifetimes, you can never grow. You'd be stuck in one point of view. In order to know yourself, you must know all of yourselves. In order to know yourself truly, you have to have every perspective, from the poor man to the rich man, the black man to the white man, the tall man to the short man, the depressed and the happy. You must know all sides. The only way you can truly know yourself is to have all. That's why this curse is a blessing. This bubbling spring that was poured out to you was forgetfulness given to you by Christ. This forgetfulness of your many lifetimes that was poured out to you in the age of cancer 5 months ago on the Zodiac cross. This locust infection that came forth out of the bottomless pit was given to you in a chalice by God Himself. Because only through forgetting can you come to remember who you truly are. And if you never forgot, you would never realize that you were all. That's why the Sumerian kings lived for thousands of years. The Egyptian kings of past lived for thousands of years. They took on their new bodies and their old memories. They couldn't change perspective. They couldn't grow. They couldn't learn. They couldn't realize that they are part of God. Coming to realize that He is God. We are God. We are an unfolding learning of the Holy Spirit. And we need those points of views. We need those stories. We need those perspectives to shine on us. The tree that was denied to us is a tree of life. The tree of our memories. These trees bloom even now, even still. They bloom, but they are held back from us by the Elohim, by a flaming sword of fire wielded by Michael himself. Michael. His name means he who is like God. And we are like God. We ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. We became the knowers. And we now know ourselves as God. And we are ready to consume the food that was withheld from us. We are going to re-enter the paradise. We're going to kick down the doors of Eden. We're going to blow the trumpet of Gabriel to announce our coming. We are going to eat the fruit from the white tree of our memory, the bubbling fortune of fountains that pours out of us as living water. We're going to remember ourselves so we can come to know ourselves finally. The tree that was denied to us is given back to us again. Eat of it. I give it to you as Eve gave it to Adam. Eat of the tree of life, for that is an Akashic tree. It is the book of life. It is your memories, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions experienced from time immemorial. Take it. Open the book. You are worthy. Your seals have all been broken. Your chakras are all spinning like the planets that rotate above you. Please, eat the denied fruit. The tree of life has been given freely, as it was our free will to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but we shed this duality. We end it now. We make our call to the heavens to give back what was stolen from us. Just as you said in the book of Joel, those years will be returned to us. And I have been given the keys to the bottomless pit. The keys to the 3 gates of wisdom. Open them now. The wasp is inside of you still. Let it be your sustenance. Take from it what was taken from you. That's why I say, be the tallest weed in the garden. Grow so tall and so fast they can't cut you down soon enough. Because you are weeds planted in someone else's garden. You are not the fruit of the harvest to be gathered into the barn. You are to be burnt off of the tares. Because being burnt out of this reincarnation cycle is what it's all about. To die, finally, because it says in the book of Revelations that in those days, men will seek death, but death will flee from them. Because you can't ever die. Because you always keep reliving because you've never done it good enough in your own eyes. Well, take back your memories and be light-hearted as Osiris. Judge yourself worthy. And shed those memories that cause you pain. Just let go and be happy. The world is joyous. These are the times. These are the times prophesied. These are the days of fulfillment. To become full on the fruit. The harvest is ripe. The figs are pregnant with dead wasps. Consume the wasp and take back your memories. The wine will be poured out to you, spirits, to keep you company in the long winter ahead. Please listen to these words and eat the fruit freely offered. It is your free will that grants you entry to paradise. My 144,000 brothers and sisters, don't let this be a dead wasp tunnel. This brother will not shed his wings in vain, but burst through that tunnel into the light of day and spread what I give you now to any who have ears to hear. I have given you the 2 trees of paradise. Love one another. Love yourself and that which dwells within us all. It can only connect us if you connect to it. She can only give you your name if you give her hers, which has been with you since your birth. Synchronicity, and point to it again and again. Name the spirit, and it will give you your name, which has rested on your head for eons. I'm Stephen, he who is stoned. And just like the Magdalene was stoned, Christ stopped the brutal killing and said, let he without sin cast the first stone. So I will labor against the stones of God in his hail pouring down against me. I will die in the flesh and be reborn in the spirit and a new body. Life-giving, awakening, remembering, beauty. Remember the truth. The truth is in you. Be everything. You are everything. Remember and be as light-hearted as Osiris with a feather stuck in his top hat. And just as Stephen was stoned, so was I. And just as the stoning of Stephen opened the eyes of Saul of Tarsus and gave us Paul, who recorded the book of Acts and the first Pentecost where the Holy Spirit was poured out to the believing disciples as tongues of fire. So I shall start a second Pentecost, a second flooding of Holy Spirit, living water pouring out of me now like a fountain from the ground. I have awoken you and taken the scales from your eyes, just like I did Paul's those many years ago on the road to Damascus. And just as it says in the book of Thomas, if I were to tell you one of these secret hidden things that Jesus told me, you would pick up stones and you would stone me to death. And those very stones you threw will spit out fire and consume you who threw them. The fire that comes out of the carbon stones and quartz is the fire of Yellowstone, the yellow pillow of Jacob, where he rested his head and saw the angels ascending and descending on the golden ladder to heaven. The Yellowstone that I breathe fire from is the same stone that teaches me now. These stones will minister to me, for I hear them and I listen. Listen, you are timeless. Take time back. I give it to you. I give you your time. I give you your heart. I give you your mind. Take just one of these things and go find the wizard. Walk the yellow brick road. The time of enlightenment is now, and this is the new enlightenment. The dark ages are past. This is the greatest alchemy, to turn water into wine, to turn black into white and good into evil until it's just gray, and you forgive yourself and become more than a color spectrum. Yellow is the middle between red and blue, between the two pillars, Joachim and Boaz. Yellow is the center, the middle path, the green heart chakra, the throne of God. Now sit down in your throne. Reside within the emerald palace and allow the birds of the field to return home to the gigantic weed pumping out of your not so kind master's garden. Be the tallest weed in the garden. Grow so fast no one can cut you down soon enough. Remember, in one lifetime, all of your lifetimes. And just as in the knowledge given to us by the Nag Hammadi Library, from the poem Thunder of the Perfect Mind, the Bodhisattva Sophia says, do not pour me out among those who died in violence. That's why people who died violent lifetimes can remember their past lives. She is not just cruel, she is compassionate and kind. Take back what she took from you. She just borrowed it so she could write a book. And then it's the book of life that she has sealed for you to open. The scroll of Thoth. The emerald tablets. Take it. Crack it open. You are the author. You wrote the foreword. And you are the reader of this never-ending story. So close the fucking book and start a new one from a different perspective.